I built that account from nothing. 3 years of early mornings, late nights, client dinners where I smiled through their jokes about my voice being too soft for business. I brought in £12 million in revenue that year alone. My manager, Richard, shook my hand in front of everyone and said I was next in line for senior director. 2 weeks later, I walked into his office expecting the promotion letter. Instead, I found him sitting with HR, his face tight. He said the board felt the role needed someone with more presence, someone who could command a room differently, someone more traditional. I understood what traditional meant. The entire floor went silent when I walked out. Sarah from legal caught my eye, her face full of pity. That look hurt more than anything Richard had said. How do you fight a battle when the rules keep changing just to keep you out? I walked into work that Tuesday expecting celebration. My numbers were the highest in the division. Instead, Richard called me into his office with HR present. He spoke about presence and tradition and client expectations. The promotion I earned went to Marcus, who had half my results but the right background. Everyone on the floor knew what had happened. Nobody said a word. One quick thing. If you have ever been judged just for being who you are, or you know someone who went through this, the story will touch you. Want to follow it until the end. Subscribe and help give voice to stories that should no longer stay silent. My name is Oliver, and I work in corporate finance at one of London's largest investment firms. I am 34 years old. I have worked here for 6 years. Every morning, I take the tube from Camden to the city, arriving at the office by 7. I grab a coffee from the Pret downstairs. I sit at my desk before most people arrive. I prefer the quiet. I can focus before the noise begins. The office is glass and steel, overlooking the Thames. Floor-to-ceiling windows show the city waking up. My desk faces the river. I keep it clean. Just my laptop, a notebook, and a small plant Sarah gave me for my birthday 2 years ago. Sarah works in legal. She is the only person who knows about me. Not everything, but enough. I met Sarah on my second week here. She invited me to lunch when she noticed I always ate alone. We became friends. Real friends. She never asked questions I was not ready to answer. When I finally told her I was gay, she just nodded and asked if I wanted more wine. That was 3 years ago. Since then, she has been my anchor in this building. My manager, Richard, runs our division. He is 49, married with 3 children. Their photos cover his desk. He talks about his son's rugby matches and his daughter's piano recitals. He coached my career when I started. He said I had potential. He pushed me toward bigger accounts. He introduced me to senior partners. I thought he believed in me. But there were signs. Small things I ignored because I wanted to believe they meant nothing. When clients visited, Richard assigned presentations to other team members. He said I was too valuable behind the scenes. When the firm hosted a gala, he suggested I skip it. He claimed my talents were better used preparing the next proposal. When promotions came up, he praised my work, but never my leadership. You remember the meeting where everything shifted? We pitched to a manufacturing client from Manchester. I prepared the entire proposal. I knew every number, every projection, every risk factor. The client arrived, 3 men in their 50s wearing expensive suits. Richard introduced everyone except me. He mentioned me as someone who helped with research. During the presentation, the client asked about market analysis. I started tonswar. Richard interrupted. He rephrased my exact words as if they were his insight. The client nodded at Richard, impressed. I sat there invisible. After they left, I confronted Richard in his office. I asked why he cut me off. He leaned back in his chair and said clients prefer hearing from senior voices. He said I should understand that presence matters in this business. He never defined what presence meant, but I understood. I was not the image they wanted representing the firm. The microaggressions never stopped. Colleagues made jokes about my weekend plans. When I said I went to the theater, Marcus from Derivatives laughed and said that figured. When I wore a purple tie, someone said it was brave. When I spoke in meetings, my ideas were questioned more than others. When I stayed quiet, people assumed I had nothing to contribute. Marcus joined our division 2 years ago. He is straight, loud, and mediocre at his job. He talks about football constantly. He makes inappropriate jokes about women. He forgets client names and misses deadlines. But he plays golf with Richard every month. He fits in. Nobody questions his place here. I met Daniel 8 months ago. He works in graphic design at an advertising firm in Shoreditch. We matched on an app. I was hesitant at first. I never dated openly. I kept that part of my life separate from work. But Daniel was patient. He understood why I was careful. Our first date was at a small restaurant in Soho. We talked for 4 hours. He made me laugh. He asked about my dreams, not just my job. He wanted to know who I was beneath the corporate mask I wore every day. Daniel is creative, optimistic, and fearless. He talks openly about being gay. He holds my hand in public without hesitation. He lives authentically in ways I envy. Being with him showed me how small I had made myself, how much I had shrunk Tofi into spaces that were never designed for me. But I kept our relationship private. I never mentioned Daniel at work. When colleagues asked about my weekend, I gave vague answers. I said I saw friends or stayed home. I never said I spent Saturday morning at the farmer's market in Borough with my boyfriend. I never mentioned cooking dinner together or watching films on his sofa. I erased him to protect myself. And that silence ate at me every day. Work consumed my life. I took on accounts nobody else wanted. I worked weekends. I responded to emails at midnight. I proved my value through sheer output. I told myself that if I worked harder than everyone else, they could not deny me. I believed merit would win. Last year, I closed the Barrington account, a textile company looking to expand into European markets. The account was worth £12 million. I spent months building that relationship. I learned everything about their business. I crafted a financial strategy that reduced their risk while maximizing growth. The CEO, Margaret Barrington, said I understood her vision better than anyone. She insisted I lead the project. Richard agreed, as long as I stayed behind the scenes. I delivered everything ahead of schedule. The rollout was flawless. Barrington sent a letter praising our firm and specifically mentioning my work. Richard forwarded it to the partners. As it, I was an asset to the team. I thought this was my moment. I thought they finally saw me. 2 months later, Richard called me into his office. He said the firm was creating a new senior director position. He said my work on Barrington proved I was ready. He promised me the role. He shook my hand. He told me to keep it quiet until the official announcement. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years. Finally, I thought. Finally, my work mattered more than who I was. I told Daniel that night. We celebrated with champagne in his flat. He kissed me and said he was proud. He said I deserved this. He said maybe now I could stop hiding. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that success would give me freedom. But deep down, I knew better. I knew this world did not change just because I worked hard. 3 weeks passed after Richard promised me the promotion. I heard nothing official. I asked him twice about the timeline. He said HR was processing paperwork. He told me to be patient. He seemed distracted, avoiding eye contact. Something felt wrong, but I pushed the feeling aside. I focused on my current projects, assuming the announcement would come soon. Then Marcus started acting differently. He sat in on meetings he normally skipped. He asked questions about my accounts. He requested copies of my client files. When he asked why, he said Richard wanted him more informed about division operations. I found it odd, but did not think much of it. Marcus never showed interest in details before. Daniel noticed my stress. I was working longer hours, coming home exhausted. He asked if everything was all right. I told him about the promotion, about waiting for confirmation. He said maybe I should push harder for an answer. He said I had a tendency to accept things instead of demanding what I deserved. He was right, but I did not know how to be demanding without risking everything. On a Thursday morning, Sarah found me in the break room. She looked uncomfortable. She asked if we could talk somewhere at Privet. We went to an empty conference room. She closed the door. She said she overheard something in an HR meeting. She was not supposed to tell me, but she felt I deserved to know. The senior director position was being announced tomorrow. They were giving it to Marcus. I felt the room tilt. I asked if she was certain. She nodded. She said Richard argued that Marcus had better rapport with clients, that he presented a stronger leadership image, that the role required someone who could represent the firm at high-level events. Sarah said the HR director pushed back. She mentioned my superior performance metric. Richard dismissed it. He said numbers were not everything. He said percentage and culture fit mattered more. I sat there processing what she told me. Sarah touched my arm. She said she was sorry. She said it was not fair. She said if I wanted to fight this, she would help. But we both knew fighting would be useful. The decision was made. They chose Marcus because he looked the part. Because clients would not question his authority. Because he was safe. Because I was not. I thanked Sarah and left the conference room. I went to the bathroom and locked Miss Elfina's stall. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to break something. But I did nothing. I just stood there, breathing, trying to understand how they could take everything I built and hand it to someone who did not earn it. That night, Daniel found me sitting in the dark in his living room. I told him what happened. He was furious. He said I should report it. He said I should take it to the employment tribunal. He said this was discrimination. But I explained how corporate politics work. It would be my word against theirs. They would deny everything. They would say Marcus was simply better suited for the role. They would make me look bitter and difficult. I would lose my job and gain nothing. Daniel argued, but eventually he understood. Sometimes the system protects itself, not the people it harms. The next morning, Richard sent an email announcing Marcus as the new senior director. He praised Marcus for his dedication and leadership. He mentioned nothing about my work. Nothing about Barrington. Nothing about the promises he made. I was erased from my own success. Marcus walked past my desk that afternoon, smiling. He did not say anything to me. He did not have to. His promotion was the message. Work hard, deliver results, prove your worth. None of it matters if you are different. If you do not fit their idea of what leadership looks like. I stopped trying after that. I did my job, but nothing more. I responded to emails during business hours only. I declined extra projects. I left at 5:30 every day. If they did not value my effort, I would not give them more than they paid for. Then something unexpected happened. Margaret Barrington called me directly. She asked if I was available for lunch. She said she had a proposal. I met her at a restaurant near St. Paul's Cathedral. She got straight to the point. Her company was expanding faster than projected. She needed someone to manage a new division. She wanted me. I was surprised. I asked why she was not going through official channels. She said she tried. She contacted Richard to request my involvement in the expansion. Richard told her I was too busy with other accounts. He suggested Marcus instead. Margaret said she met with Marcus once and knew immediately he was wrong for the project. She said I understood her business in ways others did not. She wanted to work with me, not the firm. She was offering me a position directly. The offer was substantial, nearly double my current salary, a title that matched my abilities, but more than that, it was respect. It was someone seeing my value and refusing to let others diminish it. I told her I needed time to think. She said she understood, but she needed an answer within 2 weeks. I discussed it with Daniel that night. He said I should take it immediately. He said staying at my current firm was killing me slowly. He said I deserved to work somewhere that valued me. But I hesitated. Leaving meant admitting defeat. It meant they won. It meant Richard and Marcus got away with everything. Then Daniel said something that changed my perspective. He said leaving was not defeat. Leaving was choosing myself. Staying would be defeat. Staying meant accepting their version of my worth. He was right. I needed to stop fighting to belong somewhere I was never welcome. I needed to build something they could never take from me. I met with Margaret again. I accepted her offer, but I had conditions. I wanted complete control over the expansion strategy. I wanted to build the team myself. I wanted my name on everything. She agreed to all of it. We shook hands. I would start in 6 weeks. I decided not to tell anyone at work until my last day. I wanted to finish my current projects professionally. I wanted to leave with my reputation intact. But I also wanted to see how they treated me in those final weeks, knowing I would soon be gone. The next month was brutal. I worked on finalizing my accounts while secretly preparing for my transition to Barrington Industries. Margaret wanted me to oversee their expansion into Scandinavia and Germany. The project was worth over £300 million. It required detailed market analysis, partnership negotiations, and financial restructuring. Everything I had done for my current firm, but on a much larger scale. And this time, my name would be. I spent evenings at Daniel's flat working on preliminary strategies for Margaret. He brought me tea and reminded me to. He said I looked happier than I had in months, despite working twice as hard. He was right. This work felt different. I was building something for myself, not proving my worth to people who would never acknowledge it. At my current firm, Marcus struggled in his new role. He missed deadlines. He confused client details. He relied on other team members to fix his mistakes. Richard covered for him constantly. He made excuses in partner meetings. He blamed transition difficulties and learning curves. Nobody questioned it. Nobody compared his performance to mine. They invested in his success because they believed he deserved it. They never gave me the same grace. 3 weeks before my departure, Richard called me into his office. He said the firm secured a major opportunity. A German pharmaceutical company was looking for a financial partner to manage their UK expansion. The initial contract was worth £40 million, with potential to grow into hundreds of millions. Richard said he wanted Marcus to lead it, but Marcus was overwhelmed. He asked if I would support Marcus on the pitch. He framed it as team collaboration. He said it would be good for my development to work on something this significant. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of his request. But I said yes. I had a reason. I knew this pharmaceutical company. I had researched them months ago when exploring European markets. I knew their CEO, Klaus Hoffmann, was particular about who he worked with. He valued expertise and honesty. He had a reputation for dropping partners who wasted his time. If Marcus led this pitch, it would fail. And I wanted to be there to see it. I spent 2 weeks preparing the proposal. Marcus contributed nothing. He attended one meeting and spent most of it on his phone. Richard told me to include Marcus in the presentation, to list him as lead strategist, to make sure Klaus saw him as the primary contact. I did what your card asked. I built Marcus a platform to fail from. The pitch meeting was at the Savoy. Klaus arrived with his CFO and head of operations. They were sharp, direct, and unimpressed by small talk. Richard introduced Marcus as our senior director and lead on the project. Klaus shook his hand without smiling. The presentation began. Marcus spoke first. Within 3 minutes, it was clear he had not read the materials. He mispronounced the company name. He confused their product lines. He provided incorrect market data. Klaus interrupted him. He asked a specific question about regulatory compliance in UK pharmaceutical imports. Marcus looked at me. Richard looked at me. Everyone looked at me. I answered Klaus directly. I explained the regulatory framework in detail. I outlined how we would navigate compliance while accelerating their market entry. I discussed their competitors and identified gaps we could exploit. Klaus leaned forward. He asked follow-up questions. I answered each one. The CFO took notes. For 20 minutes, I essentially ran the meeting while Marcus sat there, silent and useless. Richard tried to interject twice. Klaus ignored him. He was focused on me. After the presentation, Klaus asked to speak with me privately. Richard objected. He said anything Klaus needed to discuss could go through him or Marcus. Klaus said no, he wanted to speak with me alone, or he was leaving. Richard had no choice. He left the room with Marcus. The CFO and head of operations stayed. Klaus asked me directly if I was leading this project. I said no, I said I was support staff. He asked why someone with my knowledge was not in charge. I did not answer. He said he had worked with many firms over his career. He recognized when talent was being wasted. He said if this project moved forward, he would only work with me. Not Marcus. Not Richard. Me. If the firm could not agree to that, the deal was off. I told Klaus I was leaving the firm in 2 weeks. His expression did not change. He asked where I was going. I told him about Barrington Industries. He knew Margaret. He said she was smart and difficult to impress. He asked if I would be handling her European expansion. I said yes. He smiled for the first time. He said he would call Margaret. He said perhaps there was a different conversation to be had. I left that meeting knowing something had shifted. Richard was waiting in the hallway. He asked what Klaus said. I told him Klaus would contact the firm directly with his decision. Richard seemed satisfied. He thought the deal was still possible. He had no idea what just happened. That night, Margaret called me. She said Klaus contacted her. He wanted to fold his UK expansion into her Scandinavian and German project. He suggested a partnership where I would oversee the combined strategy. The new contract value was £450 million. It was the largest deal Margaret had ever negotiated, and it existed because of me. Because Klaus refused to work with people who did not respect talent. Margaret asked if I was ready for something this big. I said yes. She said we would announce the partnership in 3 weeks after I officially joined her company. She said my former firm would find out the same time as everyone else. She said Klaus specifically requested they not be informally. He did not want them trying to interfere or claim involvement. This was my deal. My success. My name. I told Daniel that night. He opened a bottle of wine. He said he was proud of me. He said I fought back the only way that mattered, by being undeniably good at what I do. By making myself indispensable to people who valued excellence over image. He kissed me. He said maybe now I could finally stop hiding who I was. My last day at the firm was quiet. I cleaned out my desk. I packed my notebooks and the small plant Sarah gave me. I said goodbye to the few people I genuinely liked. Sarah hugged me. She said I was doing the right thing. She said she wished she had my courage. I told her courage was just exhaustion with a plan. She laughed. She made me promise to stay in touch. I said I would. Richard called me into his office. He said he was disappointed I was leaving. He said I had a future here if I was patient. Hesiod, sometimes we have to wait our turn. I smiled and nodded. I did not tell him I was done waiting for things I had already earned. I did not tell him about Margaret or Klaus or the £450 million deal I was walking into. I just shook his hand and left. Marcus did not say goodbye. He avoided me all day. I think he knew on some level that his promotion was built on my work, that he was a placeholder for what they thought leadership should look like, that he would never be as good at this job as I was, but he would never admit it. Admitting it would mean confronting his own mediocrity. I started at Barrington Industries on a Monday. Margaret gave me an office overlooking the city. She introduced me to the team I would be building. She gave me complete autonomy. She said I knew what needed to be done. She trusted me to do it. That trust felt foreign after years of being questioned and doubted. It took me weeks to stop waiting for someone to undermine me. The partnership with Klaus was announced 3 weeks later. Margaret held a press conference. She introduced me as the director of European expansion. She credited me by name for securing the partnership. Klaus spoke about why he chose to work with us. He said it was because of the expertise and integrity I demonstrated. He said too many firms prioritize appearance over competence. He said he refused to work with people who did not recognize talent when they saw it. The announcement made industry news. Financial publications covered the deal. My former firm was mentioned briefly as a company Klaus had considered, but rejected. My phone started ringing. Colleagues from my old job called to congratulate me. Some sounded genuine. Most sounded confused. They could not understand how I went from support staff to leading one of the largest contracts in the sector. They could not reconcile the version of me they ignored with the version of me succeeding publicly. Richard sent an email. He congratulated me on the new position. He said he always knew I would do well. He said if I ever needed advice or support, I should reach out. I deleted the email without responding. He did not deserve my words. He certainly did not deserve credit for my success. The real fallout came 2 months later. My former firm lost 3 major accounts. Clients were unhappy with Marcus. They said he did not understand their needs. They said the quality of work had declined. Partners started asking questions. They looked at performance metrics from when I was there versus after I left. The difference was undeniable. Richard tried to explain it away. He said market conditions changed. He said clients were being unreasonable. But numbers do not lie. And the partners knew it. One of the senior partners, Jeffrey, reached out to me directly. He asked if I would consider returning. He said they made mistakes. He said they should have promoted me. He offered me a senior director position with a significant salary increase. He said I could name my terms. I met with him for coffee, not because I was interested, but because I wanted him to understand what they lost. I told Jeffrey I appreciated the offer, but I was not interested. I said I was building something at Barrington that I believed in. I said I worked with people who valued me from the beginning, not after I proved myself somewhere else. Jeffrey nodded. He said he understood. He said the firm was going through changes. He said they were reassessing leadership and culture. He did not say it directly, but I knew Richard was being pushed out. Marcus would likely follow. The firm was paying for their decisions, not with money, but with reputation. And in our industry, reputation is everything. Klaus and Ibeka Medjanoun partners. He introduced me to other companies in his network. He recommended me personally. Within 6 months, I secured 4 additional contracts. Barrington Industries grew faster than Margaret projected. She offered me a partnership stake in the company. She said I earned it. She said my name brought credibility and trust. She said people wanted to work with me specifically. That felt surreal. For years, I was told to stay in the background. Now, I was the reason people signed contracts. Daniel moved in with me around this time. We found a flat in Canary Wharf with huge windows and space for both of us. He set up a studio for his design work. I had an office for evenings when I needed quiet. We cooked dinners together. We hosted friends. We lived openly and unapologetically. I stopped hiding. I stopped shrinking. I introduced Daniel as my partner in professional settings. Naba Dykert. Or if they did, they kept it to themselves because my work spoke louder than their prejudice. Sarah left my former firm 6 months after I did. She called and said working there felt complicit after watching what they did to me. She said she could not be part of a system that rewarded mediocrity and punished difference. She joined a nonprofit focused on employment discrimination. She said my situation inspired her. She said change happens when people refuse to accept those things have always been. I told her I was proud of her. She said we were proud of each other. Richard was forced to resign. The official reason was restructuring. The real reason was his division collapsed after I left. Marcus was demoted. He returned to his previous role. I heard through industry contacts that he blamed me for his failure. He said I sabotaged him. He said I set him up. He could not accept that he was simply not qualified, that he was promoted beyond his abilities to satisfy outdated ideas about who should lead. His failure was not my fault. It was the inevitable result of valuing image over substance. My former firm tried to rebuild. They hired new leadership. They implemented diversity initiatives. They released statements about inclusion and equal opportunity. But words do not erase history. Actions do. And their actions showed exactly who they were when it mattered. Some former colleagues reached out to apologize. They said they should have spoken up. They said they knew what was happening was wrong. I appreciated their words, but I also knew why they stayed silent. Speaking up costs something. And not everyone is willing to pay that price. I think about that day in Richard's office often. The day he told me I was not right for senior director. The day he chose Marcus over me. At the time, it felt like the end of everything I worked for. It felt like proof that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be enough. But I was wrong. It was not the end. It was the beginning. Leaving that firm taught me something important. My value is not determined by people who refuse to see it. My worth is not defined by systems built to exclude me. I spent years trying to fit into a space that was never designed for someone like me. I made myself smaller, quieter, less visible. I thought if I just worked hard enough, they would Havedo recognize me. But recognition is not something you earn from people who have already decided you do not belong. The £450 million deal was not revenge. It was clarity. It was proof that the right people see talent regardless of who you are. Klaus did not care that I was gay. Margaret did not care. They cared that I was exceptional at my job. They cared that I delivered results. That is the standard I hold myself to now. Not their prejudice. My excellence. If this story inspired you, if you have ever felt diminished for being who you are, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we share real stories of overcoming and resistance. And if you have your own story of triumph over prejudice, share it in the comments. Your experience could inspire someone going through a similar situation. Remember, your value is not defined by the prejudice of others. Your talent is greater than any barrier they try to put in your way. And sometimes the best revenge is simply being who you are without apologizing. Thank you for watching, and until the next story.